morning, everyone. Howie here. Excited to begin a new week. It's Monday. It's a special week, though, huh? Monday, January 20th, Inauguration Day for President Donald J. Trump and also Martin Luther King Day. Interesting. It's interesting that they overlap. Let me get myself set up here. I want to begin with because so some people are going to be upset about this overlap that it's going to take away from Martin Luther King, and it's not. I think it's actually a great coincidence that it's they're together today because it is a new beginning, and I think it really is a beginning where we can look at content of character and not the skin color or identity politics. I know if you're not a Trump person, you're gonna shake your head at what I'm saying. I'm going to talk about the inauguration. I'm going to talk about some new positive beginnings. But what's on my mind and over the weekend, I was finding articles, finding videos and thinking, spending time in the morning without any technology, without any news. And, a thought came to me. I think it was Saturday morning and I made some notes. And most of you know, I don't do a script here. I find things that are interesting. Sometimes I read the whole article, watch the video. Sometimes it's right. I watch it and I read it with you online, live, because I want it to be an unfolding, an unveiling, what Peter Thiel calls an apocalypse, right? Not at the end of times, but a unveiling of the truth. And we discover it together, going into AI together, and the new beginning of the Trump administration. But I had this thought came to mind, and I thought it sounded a little dramatic. But I started to flush it out because that's the thought that came to me. And I'm going to share these notes with you, and I'm going to talk about it. It's going to be my monologue this morning. And I have to say, I think it's interesting to me. And that's how I work. If it's interesting to me, I share it because I want the show to be authentic. And this is what the thoughts. We need to remember where we were, how close we are, and do we realize how many lives may be or will be saved. And what do I mean by that? That's the dramatic part. How many lives may be or will be saved? I think that if you look at the where we were, how close we are, and how many lives potentially will be saved, and listen to this list of things that I point out, I think you may start to understand where I'm coming from, or maybe even agree with me. Um, if things continued without Trump being inaugurated today on the current path under the Joe Biden administration, and of course, it's not just the Joe Biden administration. It's an arc, right? It's an arc that was I don't know when began post World War II, and then of course, assassination of Kennedy is becoming more and more intriguing. Trump says he's going to release all the records, and the military, not the military men and women that serve, but the industry, right? The complex, like the pharmaceutical companies, huge business interest, geopolitical politics and real politics, and all this combined, and we get this giant Washington, literally geographically giant. It's just massive consolidation of power, and also not geographic, just the consolidation of power through the exercise of executive declarations, and the bureaucracy growing and growing. Okay, so here I got 20 points, and I didn't come up with a round number. I just kept listing, and these are the 20 things that I think we should remember where we were, how close we are, and do we realize how many lives will be or are saved. Here we go. Number one, the consolidation of power in Washington. That was just going to continue on and on and on. Number two, free speech. If we didn't have this win, where were we going with free speech? We see the difference it's already making with social media and the Zuckerberg and Bezos and LA Times owner and New York Times reporters. And, things are shifting. Okay. Freedom of speech. Where was it going to go if Trump's not inaugurated today? The canceling culture. They basically, in universities or anybody holding a government position or at a university or even a business position that doesn't agree with the orthodoxy of the progressive movement, we're canceled. a soft tyranny, just removed from, deplatformed, or debanking, or just their position eliminated. Okay, number four, the cultural destruction, the role of the father, the transgender issue of gender, marriage, the sanctity of marriage, the idea of man and woman come together, creating children through the grace of God and raising them to love their country, to love their God, to love their community, to serve, the responsibility, also the cultural impact of the technology just running wild. Okay, number five, we have what I'm just wrote down as the assassination of God in our culture, the elimination of God from our from the public square, and that was going to continue down that road. Okay, and we have number six, the weaponization of the Justice Department. Obviously, we have news today. Biden is going to pardon Fauci and some others preemptively without any investigation or charges being filed first. Major. His weaponization of the Justice Department is proved today by his use of the pardon. Completely inappropriate. Shouldn't we know the crime that they're charged of before the president pardons them? Number seven, the border. What was going to happen? Onward and onward with border, people coming in and drugs and terrorists, on and on the border. That's not like all these issues are going to be solved in one moment, but I think we have to all agree that every one of these issues at least is going to be halted, hopefully stopped, and the other direction, go in the other direction, which results in more freedom of speech and less consolidation of power, and the stopping of the destruction of culture and the actual encouragement of the Judeo-Christian, Greco-Roman nobility culture. Okay, the God being put back into our lives and in the public square, no longer having a weaponization of the Justice Department, and having the organizations like the FBI begin to be respected in people's eyes. We have hopefully a secure border. Number eight, spending. The spending has to stop. Dodge, right? One stop is stop the waste, and on spending. So hopefully that comes to a stop, or we begin to and remove the power in Washington, put them in other states, cut down offices that aren't net needed, and just trim the fat, lots of fat. Nine, by the way, as we look at health or cancer, right? Cancer is caused by lack of health, right? Too much sugar, too much fat, not enough exercise, not enough movement. That's Washington. Too much fat, too much sugar, too many sweets, not enough movement outside of Washington. It's all this big consolidated tumor. Nine, the welfare state. On and on. We're just going to keep handing things out to people. Benjamin Franklin, I'm paraphrasing, but famously said, you have to make poverty uncomfortable. Yes, be charitable and help them. But if you make poverty too comfortable, the people will never leave poverty. I think that's what we have in many ways with our urban housing. They never leave. It's not the point. The point isn't to go on welfare and stay. The point isn't to be subsidized housing and stay. It's to help people in a position for them to lift themselves up from the bootstraps, get a breath, and then move on. Number 10, elections, election integrity. That has been under attack. If people don't believe in elections, then then the value of democracy goes out the window. And without democracy, we don't have the apparatus to have a healthy, productive republic. Number 11, the printing of money. Never ending printing of money, not backed by gold or silver. And the trust of the U.S. government to pay their debt, as our debt and our spending goes out of control, and our debt, and we print money. That is not going to. Inflation so often is a precursor to major problems or downfalls of governments. Look at World War II in Germany. Hitler coming into power. Inflation was a huge factor. 12, energy, right? Energy, what I would say, versus climate concerns. Of course, we want to protect the environment. I believe the Republicans are really missing a big opportunity. They should grab hold of the environmental issue. We love nature. We love clean water. We love our mountains and our skies. It's why that's been is held so firmly by the progressive and Democratic Party, progressive liberals. I don't know. As if you want free enterprise and you want to have energy independence, that means that you can't be a lover of nature. No, we have to protect the environment, of course, and cherish it. The way you protect it is you encourage love for it, okay, and then you pass reasonable regulations and bills. But we have to have energy independence, okay, and that we had under Trump, and then we of course gave it away. 13, the neocon war machine, Ukraine situation. We can't just have these guys. This goes back. This is an interesting. I was watching the Tucker Carlson show the other day with Oliver Stone, the director, and they were talking about Kennedy, the Kennedy assassination, Kennedy, and why. Was it because he was really willing to reach out in a peaceful way to the Soviet Union? It's a mystery, and that the Kennedy's great speech at American universities, last major speech before his assassination, was really this idea of the roadmap for peace. So the neocon movement of endless wars and the danger, as we've seen, of U.S. missiles being fired onto Russian soil with our permission under Biden after the Trump election. All right. Neocons, what do we got? 14. Pharmaceutical. We have to be grateful for the awesome use of pharmaceutical drugs to treat various diseases, but we also know that the use of it can just become completely detrimental to the benefit of especially young people. Putting kids immediately on, classifying as fast as we can ADHD or autism, and more drugs and more drugs and more drugs, and we create our nutrition. Poor nutrition, as pointed out by Kennedy, creates these problems. The pharmaceutical companies, quote unquote, solve the problem with drugs, which leads to more complications, and on and on. And it's obviously the power and the money in the pharmaceutical industry is tremendous. All right, what else do we have? We have, let's see. Yeah, nutrition. I already touched on that briefly, but again, nutrition on the Kennedy. Number 16, no true press. What direction were we moving? And that's why I point out people like Bari, Weiss, or Matt Taibbi, or great publications like Epic or The Tablet, right? And the Free Press. So what direction were we going? All these things, every one of these factors that I'm pointing out was moving in the wrong direction and rapidly. 17, regulations. You can't have an entrepreneurial spirit, the New York spirit, when the government is constantly tying the hands of entrepreneurs, or the tax burden is so high that they just have to spend all their time trying to find ways to legally avoid taxes, which is you're allowed to legally avoid taxes, right? You do what you can to pay the least amount of taxes and using every legal channel possible. But between taxes and regulation, the spirit, the entrepreneur uses all that energy to avoid problems instead of creating products that are better. As Musk says, spend every day going to your office and how do I make my product better? 18, AI. Right? Mark Andreessen saying that Trump had to be elected because of the way the Biden administration was treating AI. This incredibly mystifying, terrifying prospect or reality in our life right now. How do we deal with AI? And if we have a government that is determined to eliminate competition, to control it, and we can't trust the government, and why should we trust the government when we have all these other factors that I'm pointing out that are caused by pretty much every one of these factors is caused by the government, then AI becomes just a nightmare, potential nightmare. So AI, major factor. And then the last two, 19 and 20. First, the positive one, trust. If all these other factors lead to a lack of trust, a skepticism toward the bureaucracy, a lack of respect in institutions like the FBI, if the weaponization of the Justice Department is used and you don't trust the Justice Department, if elections aren't, you don't believe elections are fair, you don't trust. Without trust, the Constitution fails. There's an inherent component of the Constitution, which is that men, of course, women, humans of nobility, of honor, will implement them because there's always ways around. So trust is just tremendous. And all these other 18 factors leading up to 19 trust break down the trust. And then 20 is the most negative thing that could result of all this. If all these factors continued, the trust would break down and we'd lead to a position of despair, a hopelessness. And what would happen then? These factors, this cancer grows so wildly. This is just speculation. I'm not saying this would happen for sure, but we have to be honest. Like, where were we going? These 18 factors move forward, and they could be consolidated to 12 factors. They could be expanded into 100 factors. But those 18 factors that I thought of sitting on the couch, making notes in my book here, lead to a destruction of trust. The result is despair. And in despair, people either become robots, right? And all innovation and creativity and production cease to exist. Humanity loses its beauty, and the country dies. Or you have some people who fight back in intellectual realm and every realm they can, but they're so squashed that basically re-education begins to be implemented from the government, like the Mao, Victor Davis Hanson talking about the cultural revolution in our country and comparing it to Mao's revolution, which was a cultural revolution and a re-education of those who did not believe consistent with Mao. And then finally, the worst case scenario is that people actively fight back or are eliminated before they can fight. They refuse to be re-educated and therefore eliminated. Again, you see it with Stalin, right? You saw it with Hitler. You saw it with Mao. Am I saying that that's where we're going? Who knows where we're going? But those 18 factors were going down a path of, let's say, at least a tremendous degree of ill health, cancer, metastasized, which leads to lack of trust, despair, and destruction of the human spirit, just a destruction of freedom of mind, re-education, or the destruction of life if it led to the idea of people actually physically fighting back or being eliminated before they could. That's where we were. That's how close it could have been. And today is a really exciting day because I think that we're in a position where we can say with good faith, like these 18 issues are, just by the election of Donald Trump, are probably leaning toward or going to, at least he's going to attempt to stop them and push them in the other direction. And there's good reason to think he will. I don't think any president has ever been more prepared to be president because of this unique situation of not being president for 4 years in between the two terms. I mean, you got to remember when Donald Trump came into office, he wasn't a government guy. He wasn't a politician. And therefore, his learning curve was so big and so complicated, and who he could trust. So if he was elected the second time, yes, he would have had that experience, but it would have been a transition right in without reflection, right? Because he would have continued 4 years into 5, 6, 7, 8. But by having these 4 years to reflect and to learn and to implement, as Mark Andreessen was talking about him the other day, a man with tremendous ability to understand complex systems. And Washington, the government of the United States, is a complex system. Trump is able now to say, hey, this is what I would have done for those 4 years, and I can do now, and who to trust and how to operate. So that's where we are. I mean, I think it's pretty exciting. And I think it's appropriate for Martin Luther King. If we take Martin Luther King at the essence of what his message was, which was really, let's just boil it down. It's not about anything except the content of your character. That is the line of Martin Luther King. Eliminate all the identity politics and the segregation just who are you as a human being? And by the way, who you are as a human being yesterday is different than who you are today. We have to allow for people to change, to evolve, and to grow. We can't praise growth mindset and the flow and the zone and then say people can't change. Of course, if people are changing to benefit themselves or of course it's politically advantageous, well, that's different. But there are true evolutions. And I think with Trump, you saw a true evolution over his life. And I think over his presidency, you saw an evolution. And over the 4 years of him not being president, you saw an evolution. And you're seeing it today. You're also seeing the evolution of other people like Zuckerberg and Kennedy and Gabbard and Zuckerberg, right? And even Bill Gates. I don't know. Bezos. This is real change. Okay, Peter Thiel. I mean, I think that article that he wrote, Peter Thiel in the Financial. If you didn't, haven't read it, take a look at my video the other day of Peter Thiel. I mean, but remember, Peter Thiel endorsed Trump in 2016. He was one of the tech guys who was all the way in front of this. You have to give that credit to him. Okay. All right. So what I want to do is I want to show you why. I'm going to show you a video that I think really, really illustrates why these 18 factors are just not made up in my head. Okay. And it crystallizes in a video, okay, that it was posted on X by Phil Holloway. Okay. And it's Mike Johnson, Speaker Johnson, right? House of Representatives Speaker. He's on Bari Weiss, we like Bari Weiss, the great Bari Weiss. She's the founder of the Free Press, and she has a podcast called The Free Press. I think it's called The Free Press in DC. And she's interviewing Mike Johnson, and he tells a story about his interaction with Joe Biden. I think we really need to listen to this because it crystallizes. I showed it to my wife and daughter. You have to watch this. I think it's one of those moments that crystallizes just how close we were. Remember the beginning of the show I said where we were, how close we are into this moment. And in this very last moment, by the way, Biden is, we'll read an article about it, is pardoning Fauci for there's no charges. So he has used the preemptive pardon. So listen to what Mike Johnson says. We'll go through it. It's about 3.5 minutes. I'm going to let it play. I think it's terrifying. And yet, because today is happening, and let it be a wonderful day, a peaceful day, a joyful day of a new beginning. But listen to what Mike Johnson says. Let me share. Okay. All right. So here's Mike Johnson on the podcast, Bari Weiss's podcast, The Free Press. And let's listen here.
I do stand by it, and I say this without any personal animus at all. I mean, in some ways, I actually kind of feel sorry for Joe Biden. I mean, he's in the twilight years of his life. He has not been in charge for some time. And I know this by personal observation, and now the whole world knows it. And it's been very, very concerning to me over the last, year and a half since I've had this position.
Can you tell us a story when you say personal observation?
It's public now because the Wall Street Journal got it and put it on the front page. But January a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I had been asked, I became speaker in October 2023, and there were all sorts of big national security concerns and everything going on. And I started requesting a meeting with the president because, I'm kind of old school. I'm a constitutional law guy. Speaker of the House should be able to talk to the president, especially in times of great national interest and calamity. But they wouldn't let me meet with him. And his staff kept giving me excuses. This went on for like 8 or 9 weeks. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't have time. What are you talking about? I'm second in line of the presidency. He has time. I need to talk to him. I can't say the classified parts, but we had some big national concerns at the time that I was losing sleep over. Finally, I just went to the Hill press corps and I said, the president is not being allowed to meet with the speaker. There's a problem. So they started putting pressure on him. Long story short, they finally relented. They invited me to the White House. I show up and I realize it's actually an ambush because it's not just me and the president. It's also Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem, the CIA director, everybody. And then, so I walked in the Oval and, I know what this is. They're going to hotbox the speaker on Ukraine funding. That's what it was. This is probably third week of January. we sit down, we're in the midst of it, and the whole conversation, and I'm going, we don't need to have this conversation. The president reaches over just like this. We're sitting right next to the fireplace in the Oval, and he grabs my arm and he says, the speaker and I just need a couple minutes together. Would y'all just leave us alone? And I looked up on the faces of some of the staff standing around the wall, and they're like, oh, no, he did it. So he called it. He's the commander in chief. So everybody leaves, and he and I are standing awkwardly in the middle of the Oval Office right over the rug by that coffee table. And I said, Mr. President, thanks for the moments. This is very important. I got some big national security things I need to talk to you about that I've heard, and I think you know, and what do we do? But first, real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG. I said, no, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security. It occurred to me, Bari, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country? I don't know who put the paper in front of him, but he didn't know.
All right. I mean, if that doesn't crystallize the position we're in. Now, like all things, I don't think we have to really go over it that much, but let's really go over it because, the more we go over it, the more it's seared into our brain. And we have to remember this. We have to remember where we were, how close we are until Trump is inaugurated, how close we are to those 18 factors, just deeper and deeper, and destruction taking place until the trust is gone and despair hits. And despair never leads anywhere good, right? Despair, like the sin against the Holy Spirit, is despair. It's to deny that there's any to be out of hope is to deny God, because God is hope. So if you have no hope in your life, then you're saying God doesn't exist. So despair is something you always must fight for, and that's why hope is essential. And hope without trust, it's hard to hope in something if you don't trust in it. All right, so let me go over this, and I want to stop every 30 seconds or so. So let's go. It's 3 minutes, so maybe spend like the next 4 or 5 minutes. Mike Johnson. First, let's say about Mike Johnson. He's a gentleman. I really hope that he has the fortitude to drive home Trump's agenda, to stand firm and fight hard, right? And not forget this fact that it's a small margin in the House. No, just you're the quarterback, Mike. Go out there and get him. We support you. I love the way he speaks. I love his demeanor. He's a great guy. But we need to pray for him. We need to pray for him that he stays steadfast and honest and true and good and work. Okay, so here he goes, and he's also he's respected by both sides of the aisle. This story, you can tell, is not made up. This is real. All right, let's go to the first 30 seconds, and then we'll comment as we go.
I do stand by it, and I say this without any personal animus at all. I mean, in some ways, I actually kind of feel sorry for Joe Biden. I mean, he's in the twilight years of his life. He has not been in charge for some time. And I know this by personal observation, and now the whole world knows it. And it's been very, very concerning to me over the last, year and a half since I've had this position.
Can you tell us a story when you say personal?
All right. So I like that, what he begins, it really reminds me of what I've said on the show many times. I feel bad for the guy. You almost feel bad for Joe Biden because you know that there's something happening where he's being taken advantage. I don't feel bad for the Joe Biden of prior dementia because Joe Biden has always been a character that is not, he's a politician through and through. He's the worst of Washington, D.C. That's why it's interesting that hopefully this negative movement of the evolution of our government culminates with Joe Biden. And it's interesting that because he probably embodies it worse than anybody else that I've ever seen. But that said, any human being that goes past that point where they enter a phase in their life where they're incapable of thinking for themselves, and in many ways they're becoming an infant again, and then when people take advantage of them, you have to feel some compassion and sympathy. So the fact that Mike's leading with this and saying Speaker Johnson is leading with this and saying that, I feel bad, he's not taking any personal satisfaction out of it. Okay. But he saw it firsthand, and Bari's asking, what can you tell us?
Observation would
well, I mean, it's public now because the Wall Street Journal got it and put it on the front page. But January a year ago, almost exactly a year ago.
All right. So again, it's already out there. Wall Street Journal reported it. So what, he's comfortable talking about it. But you can see, though, he's not. What I love about his demeanor is like there's no personal satisfaction. It's the reality. It's in a sense sadness for Joe Biden, sadness for our country. And yet at the same time has to be spoken, and has to be, how do we prevent this happening in the beginning? So he says it's January a year ago. So guys, think of, for a year, this is the condition Joe Biden was in a year ago, 12 months ago. So, and it didn't happen the day before he saw him, I'm sure it was happening. So for how long have we had a president who is not in charge?
I had been asked, I became speaker in October 2023. And there were all sorts of big national security concerns and everything going on. And I started requesting a meeting with the president because, I'm kind of old school. I'm a constitutional law guy. The Speaker of the House should be able to talk to the president, especially in times of great national interest and calamity. But they wouldn't let me meet with him. And his staff kept giving me excuses. This went on for like 8 or 9 weeks. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't have time. What are you talking about? I'm second in line of the presidency. He has time. I need to talk to him. We had, I can't say the classified parts, but we had some big national concerns at the time that I was losing sleep over. Finally, all
right, he's speaker. He's second in line. So he's third. President, vice president, him. Okay, second in line. After the president, something happens to the president, vice president. If something happened to both of them at the same time, he would be president. 8 or 9 weeks, he can't meet with the president of the United States. He's the Speaker of the House, second in line for the presidency, behind the vice president. And he can't meet with the president. They won't let him. So what does he do? He goes to the press, right? He starts to tell that he can't get a meeting. They pressure him. He gets the meeting.
Just went to the Hill press corps and I said, the president is not being allowed to meet with the speaker. There's a problem. So they started putting pressure on him. Long story short, they finally relented. They invited me to the White House. I show up and I realize it's actually an ambush because it's not just me and the president. It's also Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem, the CIA director, everybody. And then, so I walked in the Oval and, I know what this is. They're going to hotbox the speaker on Ukraine funding. That's what it was. This is probably third week of January. We sit down. We're in the midst of it.
All right. Even that. He goes to, so he finally gets the meeting. He goes there, and it's not him and Biden. It's Kamala and Schumer, right? And I mean, it's completely, they don't want him alone. They don't want Biden meeting with anyone. So you walk into a room to have this meeting, the Speaker of the House and the President of the United States should be able to talk alone. And they have a room full of people. And of course, Mike Johnson knows exactly. This is how bad this man was. They wouldn't let him speak by himself. This is why there was no press conferences. This is why they didn't want to debate. And they finally decided to, because they knew they probably already determined that Biden had to go. So they used the debate in order to get rid of him.
And the whole conversation, and I'm going, we don't need to have this conversation. The president reaches over just like this. We're sitting right next to the fireplace in the Oval, and he grabs my arm and he says, the speaker and I just need a couple minutes together. Would y'all just leave us alone? And I looked up on the faces of some of the staff standing around the wall, and they're like, oh, no, he did it. So he called it. He's the commander in chief. So everybody leaves, and he and I are standing awkwardly in the.
This is really important. This is really important. That last little bit. So he finally gets the meeting. What it tells me is that Biden wasn't the one wasn't refusing to meet him. He wasn't even being told about the request to have a meeting with Mike Johnson. And why do I say that? Because when he finally does get the meeting, all these other people are there to protect the president. And Biden reaches over because Biden still thinks he's in charge. This is what's so scary. Biden wasn't in on it. Biden wasn't one of these guys. He's like, getting old and be like, hey, don't leave me alone. Help me out here. I'm old and just be with me all the time. And Because that could happen now. It could go two directions. Someone gets old and they lose confidence. They're not secure in themselves anymore, right? And he's in that situation. He's president of the United States. And there's two ways he could go. He could be the one who's saying, don't leave me alone. Don't put me in front of a camera. I know I'm not myself. Protect me. Or he's totally unaware of it and other parties are doing it to him. I think the first is you prefer the first, because at least he would say, well, Mike Johnson wants to meet with me and I can't because okay, if I'm going to meet with him, be there with me. At least it shows a degree of consciousness of the situation. For Joe Biden to be in that room after all those weeks and then want to meet alone with him shows that he was never told of the request to meet in the first place. And now that he's in the room with Mike Johnson and all these other people, the old human side, the politician, the normal side, I'm president of the United States. I want to talk to the Speaker of the House by myself. And then the looks on the faces. This man was protected. This man was unaware. Joe Biden was unaware of what they were doing. They're unaware of holding off meetings. They were unaware of he was unaware that they were all in that room for that reason. So he says, can you leave the room and we're going to talk? This is where it gets terrifying.
In the middle of the Oval Office, right over the rug by that coffee table. And I said, Mr. President, thanks for the moments. This is very important. I got some big national security things I need to talk to you about that I've heard and I think you know, and what do we do? But first, real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me.
So Mike Johnson, before he begins talking about the major things they need to talk to about classified stuff, he's from Louisiana, a huge energy state. Sir, why did you pause the exports of LNG, liquid natural gas, to Europe? Pause. I mean, it's tremendous. Pausing the exports, which Mike Johnson's pointing out is Russia lives and breathes on oil. Okay. And if we're not sending energy to Europe, well, Europe has to get it from him or China. So you're helping him. You're filling the pockets up of Putin, who you're fighting in Ukraine. Why? And Biden says,
stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr.
I didn't do that. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. It's an executive order 3 weeks ago. This is like out of a movie. That should just be on replay every day. We should all listen to that every day. And realize what this Democratic Party tried to do. Who was it? Was it Kamala? Was it Jake Sullivan? Who was it that was doing this? Who was controlling this? Was it Obama behind the scenes? Who?
Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG.
I signed an order for the study of LNG. If this is all true, then somebody lied to the President of the United States and put a piece of paper in front of him and told him it was something it wasn't. And the poor guy, in a way, right? The poor guy, the poor nation. Mike Johnson's talking to this man like he's visiting an elderly uncle in the nursing home. And trying, no, your wife's passed away 10 years ago. No, she's breaking the reality to him.
I said, no, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security. It occurred to me, Bari, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country? I don't know who put the paper in front of him, but he didn't know.
All right. There it is. I don't know who put the paper in front of him, but he didn't know. So Mike Johnson's assessment is that Biden was telling the truth. He really didn't know. He really thought he signed something that was a study of LNG, not pausing the export Louisiana from exporting it to Europe. Those 18 factors that I read off this morning that result in either trust or lack of trust, and if it's lack of trust, leads to despair, which leads to destruction. Despair always leads to destruction, individually or collectively. So I really pray this morning. We could go on, and I don't think I'm going to, because it's a joyous day, and we don't want to harp on the negativity. And it's time to let Joe Biden go off into the sunset, and God bless him. Right? God bless him. Let him go, and live out the remainder of his life in any way he chooses. But we must remember where we were, how close we are, and how many lives potentially are now saved. The degree of destruction that results in the strongest, greatest empire to ever exist in this world, marching toward full metastasized cancer, full and utter cancer. And you could come up with another 10 factors, every direction in our country we're moving the wrong direction. So we have to pray for Trump. We have to really pray that he is a unifier in the truest sense. That we look at people like I'm gonna play one more thing. And if you don't take my word for it, then look at the other people. And now Bill Gates is not somebody that we associate with Republicans or Trump, but Bill Gates, like the other tech leaders, like the other big major business leaders of our world, met with Trump. And it's reported on, I think it's at the Post. Let me bring it up and let's listen to it, because I think I'm going to end with this because it shows great hope. All right. So let me play the Bill Gates piece and show you what I mean. And I think, let's see, Bill Gates. All right. So here's Bill Gates. This is posted by the New York Post, and it was on, I think it's, let's see. He was, there was a billionaire Bill Gates revealed he recently had an intriguing 3-hour dinner with President Trump. All right. So it's posted by the New York Post, but I think it was the Washington. Let's see who actually did the interview. All right. Let's listen and talk about it a little bit and end the day on what I believe is a very positive note.
Have you met with Donald Trump since the election?
Yeah, I had a chance to go have a long and actually quite intriguing dinner with him.
What did you discuss? What was intriguing?
Well, we touched on a lot of things. It was over 3 hours. To my surprise, it was, just he and I, his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, and the person who helps manage things for me, Larry Cohen. So the four of us sat there, and it was quite wide-ranging. Global health's the area that I work in, and
all right, I want to stop for a second. You see Trump's MO. You see the way his method of operation. All right, this is common. People go to meet him, and it's going to be an hour, a half, and it ends up being usually you hear this refrain that they're surprised how much time he spends. And then, this 1 hour meeting or two leads to 3 hours. And the other part is he doesn't have rooms full of people. It's intimate. It's him, his chief of staff, and Gates and the guy that helps him out. So there's 4 people sitting there for 3 hours talking. That's what happened with Kennedy, right? When Kennedy went down to Florida, that's what happened with Zuckerberg, right? That's that's how Musk got, right? A while back, Musk was not on the Trump bandwagon, but he went down to Mar-a-Lago. This is the way Trump operates. He goes on Rogan and talks for 3 hours. It's public because he's talking online. But Trump is a man who likes to talk and to apparently listen and to engage in over time, hours. When you speak to somebody for hours, you're able to flush things out. You're able to find common ground. You're able to negotiate in the truest sense. You're able to have dialogue. I talk, you listen sincerely. You talk, I listen sincerely. And lo and behold, almost all human beings, when this happens, they find something. And if they find nothing else, they find that the other person is a human being and not a caricature, not a political cartoon. And listen, he sits down, 3-hour meeting. They talk. He's going to tell what they talk about, and then last 40 seconds or so, he's a very interesting statement. So listen.
Such amazing things have happened and can happen there. I spoke a lot about HIV and that the foundation's literally working on a cure for that. We're at an early stage, and so he, in the COVID days, accelerated the vaccine innovation. So I, was asking him if maybe the same kind of thing could be done here, and we both got, I think, pretty excited about that. We talked about polio, where we're very close to getting that done, but if you stop, it'll spread back. And so I explained why it's been tough in Pakistan, Afghanistan. We've had cases show up in Gaza. We have cases in Africa. And he was fascinated to hear what he could do to maximize the chance that during the next 4 years, that incredible milestone will be achieved. I felt like he was, energized and, looking forward to helping to drive innovation. I was frankly impressed with how well he showed a lot of interest in the issues I brought up.
I'm going to go back and play that last part again. Listen, and we're going to take a good look at his body language and the words he uses.
And we both got, I think, pretty excited about that.
We both got pretty excited about that. I'm going to tell you what, this is just my hunch. Bill Gates is sincerely surprised. He's also slightly embarrassed. He's embarrassed that he can't deny that it was an intriguing meeting and that he was impressed with Trump. He's embarrassed in front of the Wall Street Journal reporter. He keeps crossing his arms. He's somewhat meek. He's conflicted, just like many others. He's conflicted because he can't like Trump. Right? This is the guy they demonized for 10 years. And yet he can't deny that he is sincerely impressed, that he's hopeful that there was a human component. So he's speaking that. Part of his spirit, you can see, is revealing the unveiling of the truth, the apocalypse, the unveiling of what Bill Gates thinks. Wow, this is great. This guy's something. This is hopeful. They found common ground. AIDS research and polio, making sure polio doesn't come back. And yet, Gates is put in a position where he's humbled by it and slightly embarrassed by it, right? Humbled. It's almost a humiliation of like, how could am I allowed to say these things? And yet he is. All right, here we go.
We talked about polio, where we're very close to getting that done, but if you stop, it'll spread back. And so I explained why it's been tough in Pakistan, Afghanistan. We've had cases show up in Gaza. We have cases in Africa. And he was fascinated to hear what he could do to maximize the chance that during the next 4 years, that incredible milestone will be achieved. I felt like he was, energized.
All right. You see the smile. You see, he uses his hands and he goes back to the arms folded, yet he's leaning forward and listening. He's a conflicted man. He's had a revelation. There's a revelation taking place in Bill Gates that Trump's not who we said he is. And I'm actually excited by it. And yet it's awkward because we've been saying this for so long. Now what do? He was energized, right? Let's see the word he uses, important to describe him. And watch the smile on his face.
Like he was energized and, looking forward to helping to drive innovation.
He was energized, looking forward to driving innovation.
I was frankly impressed with
how well he
showed a lot of interest in
With how well he showed a lot of interest.
the issues I brought up.
The issues I brought up, the issues that are important to me. See, what it also says is the issues that are important to me. Trump has an ability to find out what people are interested in, what they care about. There's a human component in that. So he goes meet with Trump, and then Trump just telling Gates what he's going to do. You can tell there was an exchange. Trump found common ground. And now is Gates tricked? Did he just trick him? Oh, he just, he just flattered him. Come on. These are major moguls. You think Bezos and Zuckerberg are easily tricked like that? No. These men are sincerely impressed with Trump. So this is why today, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., right, have a dream. And we have a dream, okay? And it's the dream is that we restore the dignity, the honor, the intentions of the founding fathers of this great nation, the greatest nation that's ever manifested itself on the face of the earth. And we pray that is a restoration of hope and trust and nobility and honor and responsibility and freedom and speech and education and religion, and that we can sincerely say, God bless America, right? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, right? So we can actually pledge and be one people under one God and hold on to what's precious to us, our family and our friends, live with hope, find common ground, and smile and be pleasantly surprised. Pope Francis used to say something about the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit loves to surprise us. The Holy Spirit loves to surprise us. And I think what you see here, I'm not going to comment on Bill Gates and who he is. I know that plenty of people don't like him. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm looking at each, because you have to. You can't say, let's live with hope and move forward, and then condemn every single person, because who knows? Who knows? And as Pope Francis said, the Holy Spirit loves to surprise us. Bill Gates was surprised by this meeting. It's shown on his face. And I welcome it. So God bless you. Enjoy this great day. Where I am is a lot of snow. No school today. I'm going to enjoy it with my family. And I love you guys. Please comment, share, subscribe, like, send emails, spread the word. And let's keep going. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye.